Well, good day and welcome to SOP, Save Our Planet. My name is Gary Willing. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day wherever you are. I'm also hoping that you do a couple things, okay? And the first thing is the most important takeaway from any one of these videos that I put up. And that is, if you listen to what I have to say and you take my advice and you go to the Share International site and you look in and do a little research about this information, it will really help you to see if it's true for you or not. And that's what I'm hoping that anybody does after listening to these videos. I'm not expecting you to take my word for it. I'm not expecting you to like and subscribe my channel. That's great if you do, but it's more important for every one of us to do a little research and look into this information and see if it's true. My job is just to let you know what it is, let you know about Maitreya, let you know about his priorities. Your job is to do something with it or not, to see if it's true for you or not. And that is what I'm hoping that you do. The second thing I'm hoping that you do is join the discussion. Let me know what you think, whether you like what I have to say or not. Post a comment. Or if you have a question or need clarification, post your question in the comment section. I'll try to answer it in the next video or the video after that, or assuredly the video after that. I don't go too long because it's important for me to try to answer you guys' questions, address your concerns, those kind of things. And sometimes these videos get a little too long because I like to talk and I have to cut it off and put it in another video. So I don't want to promise you that it was in the next video, but it will probably more than likely be in the video after that. Or you can email me, searchforsigns@mail.com. All righty. Now, I had a question from Anthony Bongiorno for the last video I put up. And the question is, how can we who accept the ageless wisdom as a truth that guides our conduct maintain our morale when confronted with those who dismiss us as members of the lunatic fringe? How can we who accept the ageless wisdom as a truth that guides our conduct maintain our morale when confronted with those who dismiss us as members of the lunatic fringe? Okay, so, and there were some wonderful comments, and I really appreciate you guys jumping in to try to add your, what your perspective is on what he said and trying to answer his question in that way. I love it when you guys do that, so appreciate you guys that jumped in and did that. Really, I do. But, I don't know you personally. I just know you from the questions that you've asked over the videos that you've commented or asked questions, right? So those don't really encapsulate who Anthony Bongiorno is, but I'm only coming from the fact that I don't know you personally by saying what I'm saying, okay? So I'm going to talk more about myself in hopes that you can use it as either a cautionary tale for some of the things that I say or an example for maybe what to do or not to do. You know what I mean? But when I first started doing this channel, okay, I had the idea and the inspiration to talk about Maitreya on YouTube. I didn't really know what to make of anything. I didn't even know how to really edit a video, and I still don't, that part of it. But I didn't know or have any expectation about it evolving into what it has today, to be honest, where people such as yourself are asking me questions that I think are really useful and important, right? And you've asked some wonderful questions over the time, the months or the weeks or whatever that you've been asking questions on this channel, right? And this is one of them. You ask it in the way that you ask it, but I've asked that same kind of question myself, to be honest with you. And when I first started this channel, Anthony, one question that I asked myself, and this was right before I put up my first video, is who's going to listen to me? I'm really not that interesting of a person, to be honest with you. I mean, I have a few jokes here, and I got some dad jokes there and that kind of stuff. But overall, when I'm in a setting like a dinner party or something, I'm not the center of conversation, to be honest with you. So I don't have that many useful anecdotes or ways of talking about sports or whatever that just keeps people engaged. Most of the time I probably bore people and I think that I'm entertaining them, but I'm really boring them and they're just being polite. But that's neither here nor there. But the important thing was that I want to say is when I asked myself that question, the thought that came back to me, Anthony, was it's not about me. It's about this information. Okay? And you might have an idea of what I'm saying about that, but so I didn't need to entertain anybody. I just needed to tell you about the information. The one thing that I loved that Benjamin Creme pretty much always said at the beginning of every one of his lectures, at every time I've heard his interviews on TV or radio, he pretty much said this, but I know he said it at the beginning of every one of his lectures. He said that his job was really simple. His job was not to convince anybody that the truth of what he was saying. It was simply just to let them know this information, and it was their job to do with anything that he said or not do with what he said, or to believe it or not. So it took all the pressure off of him, and he could just speak. You know what I'm saying? So, and then the other thought that came my way when I was about to put these videos up was, how do I talk about this? You know, especially when I started getting comments and coming back my way that were rather argumentative and combative, you know, naturally, is to speak the truth as I see it. Okay, I don't claim to speak the truth. I just claim to speak the truth as I see it, but not argue with anyone, which takes a degree of detachment. You have to be able to allow somebody else to have the reaction that they have, even if it's towards you. Because any reaction that they have toward any one of us when you're you're sharing this information with them, has really nothing to do with you. I've had people make all sorts of wild claims about me. They use my name. They say Gary this, Gary that, and they have no idea who I really am, or you know what I mean? Because they don't know me. And even those people who say they love what I say and thank me and think all sorts of wonderful things about me really aren't. They don't really know me either. So I don't really get too excited about what they say either, because it's like they're not really talking about me. They're talking about the information. This is all about the information. And I've only claimed to be an ordinary person who has extraordinary information and is willing to share it. That's it. I'm not claiming to speak the truth. I'm not claiming any truth or any, claiming to know the future about whatever. I am just simply speaking the truth as I see it. And then when somebody says whatever they say, I try not to argue with them. Which takes, like this person was commenting along, with the others, that it takes a degree of detachment to be able to do that. And that's the process. That's the exercise. That's the challenge, is to be able to say it without having an expectation of what they're going to do. Okay? So again, I only know you from your comments. So I don't know you. I've never seen you try to tell somebody about this. Okay? So if I came running up to somebody in a store and just started talking to them about, very excitedly about Maitreya or about hope for the future, about the need for peace, they would have the same initial reaction toward me, because most people aren't used to people coming running up to them like that. They're not open-minded enough to have that kind of, most people aren't open-minded enough to have somebody run up to them in that way and then be open to listen to what they have to say. They would be pretty closed, right? So the timing of what you say and how you say it is, of course, very important to whether somebody's going to react, how they react. Does that make sense? So you'd have to also consider that. And again, I don't know you, so I'm not assuming that that's what you're doing. I'm just, telling you that there were times when I first started this that I was telling people in my life, I was talking to people in stores, perhaps, and I got that reaction from them. And there were times when the conversation wasn't moving in a direction about anything to do with Maitreya or his priorities, and I threw it in there, and I got that similar kind of reaction. So does that make sense? So I'm going to use my brother as an example, because I just talked about him in the last video, where I was amazed that he was talking about the need for peace. And if you knew my brother over the last, over my life, he has never once talked about the need for peace. This is the first time ever. That's why I'm like going, this is exactly what I've been talking about for months, that people are waking up to the need for peace. We have to have peace. They don't know how to get there. They don't know what the process is going to be. Their intention and their reason for saying that might be different than mine. They might not be concerned so much about a lack of violence, but they just don't want the United States to pay for it. Whatever the case may be, my brother spoke aloud that he does not want any more wars. That's the exact same thing that Maitreya has been saying. He just said it as my brother would say it. And there were times when my brother and I got into heated exchanges about this very thing. And examples were, an example would be when he and I were driving up to my grandma's funeral in Michigan, and we were talking about politics, because this was in the maybe 2004, 2005. I can't remember the exact year, but it was around the time of the invasion into Iraq. The war was probably in full bloom, and at the time, the Bush administration was doing all sorts of really nefarious things and taking humanity back from the progress that had been made from the 80s to the 90s to when he took over. They really took everything back. And a lot of that was, I think, under the influence of Dick Cheney, who was an old neocon, right? And my brother even mentioned, he goes, I used to like them. He goes, now I don't like what they stood for at all, because they stood for war. And it was amazing to hear my brother say these kind of things, right? And so when I spoke to my brother about it years ago, I don't remember how I said it. I don't know what the initial conversation was. I just remember my brother and I getting into heated exchanges about politics, because he's a hardhead and I'm a hardhead. But at the end of the day, what I was saying to him was proved to be correct. They're neocons. There was no need for that war, and there was no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and they were not responsible for 9/11. Now and all this has kind of come out since then. And my brothers realized the truth of those statements, right? But I haven't spoken about politics or the need for peace with my brother for decades, for 20 years. And I've been waiting for any kind of opening into that. So I never mentioned anything about Maitreya to my brother. I haven't mentioned anything about Maitreya to my brother. He might know about it because my mother said something to him about it, but because she likes to talk about what's going on in each of our lives, right? But I haven't spoken to my brother about it. And there was an instance, and I talk about this from time to time. I don't know if you know this, Anthony, but there was an experience that I had kind of with Maitreya, but it was more of a UFO experience, really. And I was on the way to my brother's house. He lives a few hundred miles from me, and it was July 4th, 2009. And on the way up there, for whatever reason, I did something that I don't normally do. I asked Maitreya for something very specific, but I asked him for something that I think is probably an outrageous request. I asked him for if it was all possible for a UFO to show up for my family. I mean, that's about on par with me asking Maitreya to show up for my family at a family gathering. I mean, it really is. And I don't know why I made such an outrageous request of Maitreya, but I did for whatever reason. And it's made for a wonderful experience for me to share with you guys, but, I don't normally go around doing those kind of things. But I did. I asked him if he would have a UFO appear for my family. And when we were shooting fireworks off, it was starting to get kind of dark, but it was still kind of light. I remember it wasn't pitch black. It was more of a dusk when we were shooting these little fireworks that were going up about 3 or 4 feet in the air. They weren't going very high. And all of a sudden, my brother's neighbor, who I don't know, I've never seen since, was the one that spotted it. And he screamed out and he yelled out an expletive, deleted, right in front of all these kids. That's a UFO. And my brother looked up. He didn't say anything initially. And then my nephew said, "Daddy, that's a UFO." And now keep in mind, the whole time I hadn't even looked up yet to see what it looked like. I was still like shaking my head in disbelief, like, how could this have happened? Even though I was the one that asked Maitreya to do it, right? And when my little nephew, who's now in his 20s, said to my brother, "That's a UFO," my brother looked up and went, "That's not a UFO. That's just a plane." You think he said it was a plane with its light out or something. And when I looked up, Anthony, it looked like a candle flame in the sky. A candle flame. And it was going very slowly and quietly and methodically right over my brother's house. I couldn't tell if it was 100 feet over my brother's house or 2,000 feet. It was just there. And then I went around the back, and I was the only one that did this. I went around the back, and the flame disappeared. It was just this little white circle, and then that white circle eventually disappeared. But I never told my brother what I'd said about Maitreya, or asked of Maitreya. And I'm waiting for the day that my brother brings up something about UFOs, and then I'll bring it up. But if I have to wait another 20 years, I'll wait another 20 years before I bring it up, because my brother is moving at his own pace, right? And this is, I'm not saying I'm like a master, but this is kind of an example of how the masters treat humanity. They give a little bit of unk, and then they have to sit back and wait how the world would respond to that little bit of inspiration, that little bit of light. But the miracle, Anthony, is that my brother's heart is opening up. He's starting to talk about peace. So you might see people in your life that are talking about peace. Listen to them, listen to what they're saying. And then when the time is right, bring it up. Does that help? I don't know if, like I said, I don't know if that's what you're doing. You're kind of like how I was in the beginning, where I was just throwing it out there whenever. But try to listen to them first, see what they're saying. Read, study. Read Ben's Master's articles. About some of the priorities of Maitreya, about the meaning and the purpose for why they're coming back, so that when you do have somebody talk about it, you'll have a better way of explaining it to them. Maybe. I'm just throwing that out there to you, And then in terms of morale, it's not about morale. It's about, there's a joy that comes from faith. And I'm not talking about a belief in something like the Christian churches, purport to have, right? I'm talking about true faith, a faith and an understanding of who and what you are. You are a unique individual amongst a oneness of the entire universe. There isn't another person in the entire universe that can explain Maitreya the way that you can explain Maitreya to someone. That you can explain the need for peace that even Maitreya can't do. And your purpose here, just like everyone else's purposes here, is far greater than you probably realize. I mean, Ben's master once put it like this: we don't know, or how did he put it? He said, the universe, not just the world, the universe would be infinitely poorer if you weren't in it. And the purpose of all our lives is to understand our own divinity. And when you do that through the honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment, goes back to those tenets of Maitreya's teachings, right? About self-realization. When you do that, there becomes this joy. It's not morale, it's a joy. It's a hope for the future. That is, and maybe you're using a different word to describe the same thing, you know what I mean? But it's a joy. And when you share this information, when you share hope with people, it comes back to you. I don't know if you ever heard me say this, but we have within our hands the opportunity to share hope or fear. You're trying to share hope with people. And when you do that, that hope will come back to you. That joy will come back to you, because we don't know exactly how that joy, how that hope will uplift someone who might really need it. And when you share fear, you do the exact opposite. And the result is the exact opposite. What comes back to you is fear. Comes back to you is criticism, is prejudice, is anger, is frustration, is impatient. I mean, all that stuff comes back to you. It's karma, And we all have within our hands the opportunity to do this. And what a wonderful opportunity to spread hope to people when we really are lacking hope. What a wonderful opportunity for every one of us to spread true love with our brothers and sisters around the world, because there is such a lack of love in the world. You can see it, And the people in the media that people look up to as a repositories of facts and truth are not getting that from them. They're getting a bunch of bluster. They're getting a bunch of fear. They're getting a bunch of hatred toward others and so forth. And they're feeding on it and they're buying into it. And when somebody such as yourself shares hope with someone, it breaks them out of that cycle. And any one of us can do this. And this is the gift of the opportunity of the moment. Maitreya is speaking to the world. He's already in the world. These masters are waiting in the wings, waiting to come into the world. The hope is there. This is the darkest before the dawn. But because we still don't know who Maitreya is, we still haven't recognized him on TV or in the media or on YouTube even or whatever. But if you look, the dawn has started. I know this sounds really overly poetic for Gary, but the dawn has already started. People such as my brother are evidence of it. which is the dawn is the awakening of the hearts of all humanity. And it's starting with what Maitreya said decades ago. The longing for peace is within the hearts of every single person on this planet, whether they are aware of it or not, whether they manifest it or not, whether they speak it or not. It doesn't matter. He said that truth is within the hearts of every one of us. And my brother is an example of it. And we're seeing it open up. If you have an opportunity to talk with somebody about sharing, bringing about justice, bringing about trust amongst nations, then talk about it. Don't hold it back. But if they're not open to it and there's not an opening in the conversation, then don't bring it up. Just hold it in your heart and be patient that eventually it will show up for them. And then what most of us haven't even realized is what is going to be the conversations amongst people in our lives when they start to recognize Maitreya or the day after the declaration. See, it's not going to stop when Maitreya is out, known for who he is in the world. That's just the beginning of the restoration of the planet. And it will take the education and the re-education of all of humanity to the truths of life, of truth of oneness, the truth of harmony, the truth in diversity, the truth of trust, the truth of sharing. All that stuff is all going to be in the mouths and the lips and the tongues of all of humanity. So if you're not having the opportunity to talk to people about peace, about sharing, about justice, about the masters of wisdom, about Maitreya and what he means for humanity, then read, study. Put into practice the teachings of Maitreya. Put into practice honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit. I guarantee you're going to fail because we all fail. The masters, these same masters that are honesty of mind, sincerity and spirit, and detachment perfectly, when they first tried it, failed. And they had to get back up and do it again. And they failed. And they had to get back up and do it again. And they failed. They had to learn the laws of life. One of the masters, the Master DK, who is like a college professor about the laws of life, initially didn't know anything about it. You know what I'm saying? Lifetimes ago, didn't know anything about the laws of life. He had to learn it. And he put it into practice and he failed. He put it into practice and he failed. He himself even talked about how he was overly devoted to his master, the Master Kudhumi, and he wasted many lifetimes, or several lifetimes, with his devotion to his master. And then Kudhumi, who was known for his love, just as Maitreya is known for his love, because he was the Apostle John, who was known for his love, and he was Pythagoras, who was also known as a loving person, had to kick him in the rear, had to show him a little tough love, and told him, your devotion is not only needed, it's unwarranted. And it crushed him. He said he fell to his knees right in front of Kudhumi. He was telling everybody that even when he was coming up through the ranks, failed. You got to be willing to fail. You got to be willing to get back up and do it again. And no better way to do it. The opportunity is there for every one of us to talk about this when the opportunity comes up. But you're going to fail, Anthony, just as I failed, just as I'm failing. And I got to get back up and do it again. I got to get back up and do it again. And that's what I'm hoping you guys do. I love you guys so much. Thank you very much for the question, Anthony, and hopefully it helps, and hopefully I answered it to help you out. I love you guys. You guys take care and enjoy the rest of your day. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.